Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki, Gaur Pranande. Hare Krishna. So today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 11, text number 18. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 4, Chapter 11, text number 18. Sa ka idam Bhagavan kala shaktya guna pravahena vibhakta virya karotya akartiva nihanti ahanta cheshta vibhumna kalu durvibhavya Sakalvidam Bhagavan Kala Shaktya Sakalvidam Bhagavan Kala Shaktya Guna Pravahena Vibhakta Virya Guna pravahena vibhakta virya Karotya karteva nihantya hanta Karotya karteva nihantya hanta Cheshta vibhumna kalu durvibhavya Cheshta vibhumna kalu durvibhavya Sakal vidam bhagavan kala shaktya Guna pravahena vibhakta virya Karotya karteva nihantya hanta Cheshta vibhumna kalu durvibhavya Sakal vidam bhagavan kala shaktya Guna pravahena vibhakta virya Karotya karteva nihantya hanta Cheshta vibhumna kalu durvibhavya Sakal vidam bhagavan kala shaktya Guna pravahena vibhakta virya Karotya karteva nihantya hanta Cheshta vibhumna kalu durvibhavya Sakal vidam bhagavan kala shaktya Guna pravahena vibhakta virya Karotya karteva nihantya hanta Cheshta vibhumna kalu durvibhavya Sa the Kalu however Idam this universe Bhagavan the personality of Godhead Kala of time Shaktya by the force Guna pravahena by the interaction of the modes of nature Vibhakta divided Virya whose potencies Karoti acts upon Akarta the non-doer Eva although Nihanti kills Ahanta non-killer Cheshta the energy Vibhumna of the Lord Kalu certainly Durvibhavya inconceivable. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, by his inconceivable supreme energy, time, causes the interaction of the three modes of material nature, and thus varieties of energy become manifest. It appears that he is acting, but he is not the actor. He is killing, but he is not the killer. Thus it is understood that only by his inconceivable power is everything happening. Purport. The word Durvibhavya means inconceivable by our tiny brain. And Vibhakta Virya means divided in varieties of potencies. This is the right explanation of the display of creative energies in the material world. We can better understand the mercy of God by an example. A government state is always supposed to be merciful, but sometimes, in order to keep law and order, the government employs its police force, and thus punishment is meted out to the rebellious citizens. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always merciful and full of transcendental qualities. But certain individual souls have forgotten their relationship with Krishna and have endeavored to lord it over material nature. As a result of their endeavor, they are involved in varieties of material interaction. It is incorrect to argue, however, that because energy issues from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is the actor. In the previous verse, the word nimitta matram indicates that the Supreme Lord is completely aloof from the action and reaction of this material world. How is everything being done? The word inconceivable has been used. It is not within the power of one's small brain to comprehend. Unless one accepts the inconceivable power and energy of the Lord, one cannot make any progress. The forces which act are certainly set up by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he is always aloof from their action and reaction. The varieties of energies produced by the interaction of material nature produce the varieties of species of life and their resultant happiness and unhappiness. How the Lord acts is nicely explained in the Vishnu Purana. Fire is situated in one place, while the heat and light produced by the fire act in many different ways. Another example given is that the electric powerhouse is situated in one place, but by its energies many different types of machinery move. The production is never identical with the original source of the energy, but the original source of energy, being the prime factor, is simultaneously one with and different from the product. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya's philosophy, Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva, is the perfect way of understanding. In this material world, the Lord incarnates in three forms, as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, by which he takes charge of the three modes of material nature. By his incarnation of Brahma, he creates. As the incarnation of Vishnu, he maintains. And by his incarnation of Shiva, he also annihilates. But the original source of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, is always apart from these actions and reactions of material nature. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshura Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swavedantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagarjatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvitam Sadvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we are at a part in Bhagavatam where Dhruva Maharaj has begun killing all of the yakshas in order to avenge his brother who was killed by one of them. And he was very successful in his killing. And then at some point Swayambhuva Manu approaches him and expresses to him that actually his actions are not so pleasing to the Lord. And he wanted to be clear to Dhruva Maharaj that actually our lives are meant for the pleasure of the Lord. And then he starts to explain that what pleases the Lord is to actually treat others with certain qualities. And they were given in one of the previous verses: tolerance, mercy, friendship, and equality. And I was thinking more and more about this part of Bhagavatam, and I was meditating on these qualities and how they are applicable to us as well. And I was thinking about how we can do so much service and we can chant so much japa, but if our dealings with others are unkind or rough in some way, or even offensive, then we cannot expect that Krishna will actually be pleased with us. And we can also understand that an offense to a Vaishnava is actually worse than an offense to the Lord. Because the Lord will forgive a person if they directly offend him, but if we offend his devotee, he's much more displeased. And there's some examples of that, like Bhrigu Muni. He wanted to test the tolerance of the Lord, so he went to Lord Vishnu and he deliberately kicked his chest. And the Lord said, "Oh, it's all right. I'm so sorry. I hope you haven't hurt your foot by kicking my hard chest." So that was the forgiveness and the kindness of the Lord when Bhrigu Muni deliberately offended him. But then on the other hand, if you think about Jagai and Madai and how they offended Lord Nityananda, the devotee of the Lord Nityananda himself was not upset, but Lord Chaitanya was very upset, and he wanted to destroy Jagai and Madai for their offense. And then another example is Durvasa Muni and Maharaj Ambarish. When Durvasa Muni was offended by Maharaj Ambarish for no good reason, because Maharaj Ambarish had to break his fast according to Shastra, and then Durvasa Muni claimed that he was not appropriately treating his guest because he had eaten before serving Durvasa Muni, and he became so much offended that he actually tried to kill Maharaj Ambarish. But then the weapon that he had struck Maharaj Ambarish with ended up turning around and approaching him, because the Lord was protecting his devotee. And then he travels all over the universe to try and seek forgiveness. He goes to Lord Brahma and he explains his situation and he asks him, "Please help me, I'm going to die," and he's panicking. And Lord Brahma says, "Actually, I cannot help you. You have to go to Lord Shiva." And so he goes to Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva also explains that actually I cannot help you. You have to go to Lord Lord Vishnu. Shri Shri Radharanath ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. And Lord Shiva says, actually you have to go to Lord Vishnu, because he is more powerful than I am, and he is more directly related to the Lord himself than I am, so go to him. So he does go to him and he begs him for forgiveness. But the Lord explains that actually I also cannot help you because the pure devotee is always in my heart and I'm always in his heart, and they don't know anything but me, so I'm protecting him. And actually your actions against him are actually against yourself. He calls it self-envy. He acted with self-envy because the reaction from his activities would be bad for him, actually. And then he explains that, "O best of the Brahmanas, you should therefore go immediately to King Ambarish, the son of Maharaj Nabanga." So he's telling him to go directly to him, the devotee, and to ask for forgiveness. So even the Lord himself would not accept his begging for forgiveness. So the Lord is so pleased when we deal with others nicely, and he's very displeased when we don't. And Srila Prabhupada says in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 12, text 13 to 20, he says that it is explained there how the Lord is pleased and who is dear to the Lord. So I'll just read a little bit of that. In the purport there, Srila Prabhupada says, "The perfectional stage of spiritual life which one can experience even while being in the material world is described in the 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita as follows. One who is not envious, but who is a kind friend to all living entities, who does not think himself a proprietor, who is free from false ego and equal both in happiness and distress, who is always satisfied and engaged in devotional service with determination, and whose mind and intelligence are in agreement with me. He is very dear to me. He for whom no one is put into difficulty, and who is not disturbed by anxiety, who is steady in happiness and distress, is very dear to me. A devotee who is not dependent on the ordinary course of activities, who is pure, expert, without cares, free from all pains, and who does not strive for some result, is very dear to me. One who grasps neither pleasure or grief, who neither laments nor desires, and who renounces both auspicious and inauspicious things, is very dear to me. One who is equal to friends and enemies, who is equipoised in honor and dishonor, heat and cold, happiness and distress, fame and infamy, who is always free from contamination, always silent and satisfied with anything, who doesn't care for any residence, who is fixed in knowledge and engaged in devotional service, is very dear to me. He who follows this imperishable path of devotional service and who completely engages himself with faith, making me the supreme goal, is very, very dear to me. So by this we can understand what qualities are pleasing to the Lord and what kind of devotee is pleasing to the Lord. And we can see in how Swayambhuva Manu is instructing Dhruva Maharaj, we can see from that the proper dealings of one devotee with another is important, and that the Lord is pleased when that is properly done. But in Dhruva's case, Swayambhuva Manu is speaking in relation to the yakshas, actually, who seem like unlikely candidates to be receiving this kind of mercy and tolerance. But the Lord, and it's explained in one of the previous purports, he is satisfied also when the devotee rises to the platform of being a Madhyam Adhikari and knows how to relate to others. So the Lord, he is pleased when we treat others in a particular way, and he's very displeased when we treat others otherwise. And it's not just applicable for the great devotees, but it's actually applicable for all living entities, including the yakshas. So even if we cause an offense to even any living entity, the Lord is not pleased by that. The Lord, he is most pleased when we serve his devotee and relate to his parts and parcels in a proper way. The Madhyam knows how to relate to others, so he would know to be merciful to those who don't know as much about Krishna, and to befriend those who are on a similar platform as them, and then to serve those who are higher than them. And what is also pleasing to the Lord is to do that which is needed. That which is needed to bring souls back to Him, that which is needed in the world. And I gave this example in a previous class where I explained that my Guru Maharaj says that it's more pleasing to offer a service that is needed than to offer a service that is not needed. So this is what is pleasing to the Lord. Like if somebody is very thirsty and you get them a glass of water, they will be so pleased. But if they're very thirsty and you bring them something else that they don't need at that time, they may be pleased, but they won't be as pleased and as grateful as if you had given them what they really needed at that moment. So the Lord, He is pleased when we show tolerance, when we show mercifulness, when we show friendship, when we show equality, because these are the qualities which are so much needed in the material world by the living entities. Because where else can we experience these qualities from, but from a devotee who is endowed, who is empowered with these qualities? They're not just ordinary qualities. I mean, having gone through that list of the kind of devotee who is pleasing to the Lord, well, at least in my case, I know I fall short of most of them. So we have to actually try to see how we can develop these qualities, and we have to actually associate with the devotees who have these qualities in order to develop them, because this is needed in the world. This is needed. So after having explained these verses or these qualities that Swayambhuva Manu has expressed to Dhruva Maharaj, he then goes on to explain more about how Krishna is the ultimate cause of everything, and then he goes into different aspects about the creation of the universe, and he explains how the Lord, He's directly involved in the creation of the whole universe and in the causes and reactions of what's going on, yet He is also aloof from everything. So it's a matter of achinta bheda bheda tattva, simultaneously one and different. And then, so these aspects are also brought up in the Bhagavad Gita. He starts to preach to him and explain how material nature is mixed to create different bodies, and how actually it seems like the immediate cause of killing seems to be Dhruva, that he's killing the yakshas, but everything is going on under the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead by His inconceivable power. But still, it's clear that although everything that's going on is sanctioned by the Lord, and the death of the yakshas was also sanctioned by the Lord, still it's not that He was pleased by the actions of Dhruva Maharaj. He didn't necessarily want Dhruva to be instrumental in killing or in causing distress to the yakshas, at the same time that He sanctioned it. So again, it's like this inconceivable idea of He is desiring something to happen at the same time that He is not necessarily involved in the choices that the individual jivas are making. And then in the text where we are reading today, it is said, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by His inconceivable supreme energy, time, causes the interaction of the three modes of material nature, and thus varieties of energy become manifest. It appears that He is acting, but He is not the actor. He is killing, but He is not the killer. Thus it is understood that only by His inconceivable power is everything happening. So the king, there are some analogies I was thinking in relation to this, because we're reading about the intricacies of the material nature and karma, and actually we cannot understand such intricacies. That's why it's described as being inconceivable. Actually, the word here, durvibhavya, means inconceivable by our tiny brain. We cannot understand how intricate karma is and how things are working, but at least we can look at some analogies to help us understand. And Srila Prabhupada gives this analogy where he says that the way the Lord operates is like an electrical powerhouse that is situated in one place, and its energies are being distributed to the whole machine, and it's helping the whole machine move. So the production of the energy is not identical with the original source of the energy, and yet all of the energy is still coming from there. So Krishna works in that same way. And then he gives another example here, like how fire is situated in one place, and the heat and the light are coming from the fire in different ways. The heat and the light can only exist because of the fire, and they are part of the fire. They cannot be separate from the fire. Yet they are not the fire itself. So Krishna works in that same way. Srila Prabhupada gives us many simple or seemingly simple analogies to understand concepts which are very high, actually, inconceivable by our tiny brains. And Krishna, it's important to remember, is Vishnu, they cannot be bewildered by their own creation. So they're always situated beyond the actions and reactions of material nature. And of course, if Krishna likes, he can be influenced by his spiritual potency, Yoga Maya, and that's only to increase the rasa or the enjoyment between himself and his devotees. For example, Krishna may want to feel that he is a helpless baby in the arms of his mother, and that he is hungry and that he is angry, and he has these experiences as a baby would in relation to their mother. But that is his desire to be under the spiritual potency of the Lord, of himself. It's never that he's influenced by the material nature, although being the creator of it. And Srila Prabhupada says here that unless one accepts the inconceivable power and energy of the Lord, one cannot make any progress. So we need a certain humility in order to understand partially how inconceivable the Lord is and to make progress. Because if we're too proud, we'll think that we can understand the Lord, and we actually can't. We can't really understand how inconceivable the Lord is. But to appreciate that and to make progress, we actually need that humility. Otherwise, we'll never be able to comprehend even a fraction of his inconceivable potencies. And Srila Prabhupada also explains here in the purport that he gives another analogy, how the government, it has a police force, and sometimes the police force has to, they have to give some kind of punishment to citizens who are not properly behaving. And then he says, similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's actually always merciful and full of transcendental qualities, but certain individual souls, they've forgotten their relationship with Krishna, and they have endeavored to lord it over material nature, and then they're involved in so many varieties of material interactions. And so therefore the Lord has enabled this process of karma to take place so that the living entities can become rectified in their consciousness. So the whole process of karma in itself is also coming from the Lord. It's not that karma works independently, but it actually does come from him. And it's there in order to actually rectify the living entity and bring them closer to him. The whole material world is actually designed for us to fulfill our desires as well as to bring us back to him, to rectify us. Srila Prabhupada in another place gives an example of how a child may want to touch fire, and the parent will say, "No, don't touch the fire." They try to dissuade them because they know the child will be severely burnt, severely hurt. But still, if the child is very persistent, eventually the father says, "Okay, touch the fire." And then when the child touches the fire, there's a reaction. He gets burnt. And then he realizes the instructions I've received from my father are true and I should follow them. And there's a reaction if I don't. And it's painful. So we living entities have behaved in the same way for thousands and thousands of births. We've decided that we wanted to enjoy here separately from the Lord. Although we cannot ever actually separate ourselves from the Lord, it's not even possible. We have tried to do that. And the Lord He's so kind, He's such a great friend to us that He never left us. He came with us as Kshirodakashayi Vishnu. He came with us as Paramatma, seated within our hearts. He's so kind that He didn't leave us. And He's there, and He's trying to dissuade us from doing those things which take us away from Him. But like the loving Father, we have a desire, we have a desire, we have a desire, and He fulfills. But in fulfilling, He knows that the reaction we get may not be good for us. But it will be good for us, because we will learn not to do it again. We have learned not to do it again. We've learned that this material world is not our home. At least we've learned that to an extent that we have been able to sit here. Because it's explained in the first canto of Bhagavatam, unless we are materially exhausted, we cannot approach the Lord. Or at least we have to be materially exhausted to some extent. And then if we do have material desires still, the Lord will definitely purify those. He will do whatever He can to bring us closer, because He is our best friend. And He's our well-wisher. He only wants the best for us. So that reaction that we get, although it is at times karma, it's also ultimately directly from Krishna. Everything ultimately is coming from Him. At the same time that He is aloof from everything. He is directly involved and He is aloof. That's the Achinta Bheda part. He's involved and He's aloof at the same time, because He can do that. He can do anything He wants. And we cannot really understand that. Yeah, we hear also how not a blade of grass can move without the sanction of the Lord. So He's the cause of everything. At the same time that He is not personally involved in the causes and the results within material nature. So material nature and karma, like I said, they're coming from Him and they're under His supervision. And so in that way He is actually directly involved, at the same time that He's aloof and free from being influenced from it Himself, or He's playing with His friends in Goloka Vrindavan, and He is embracing His mother Yashoda, and He's not in those moments at all thinking about the cosmic manifestation. He's not thinking about karma. He doesn't have to think about anything except just being a baby, because that's His inconceivable potency there. But actually, ultimately, everything can be brought into the arena of His spiritual potency. Although we may see material nature as being a part of Him, but not under His direct spiritual energy, it can be brought into His spiritual energy. It is actually a part of His spiritual energy, because everything coming from Him is spiritual. It's just that we oftentimes misuse His material energy as though it were material, instead of using it for its proper purpose, in which case we can see it is actually spiritual. And that is yukta vairagya. Whatever we have, it is actually the Lord's property. It is actually a part of His spiritual energy. But our perception of it and our use of it makes it a part of His material energy, although it is actually part of Him, or used for His service. Meant to be used for His service. And it's not just a case of material energy or in the sense of what we can see, but also the aspect of action and reaction and karma. This is also a part of the Lord, coming from the Lord, although from our perception it may be also a part of material nature. But even that whole aspect of the Lord in our lives can be purified, action and reaction. If our action is for the Lord, then actually the outcome of that action will be what Krishna desires. Just like how Arjuna is there on the battlefield and he is bewildered and he's thinking, what is the reaction I will get for killing my friends and my family? Surely I will go to the hellish planet. Surely I will suffer terribly because of my actions. And the Lord explains that I have desired for this war to take place. I desired for the death of the other party to take place. And you're only an instrument, actually. So you fight because I've instructed you to do this, and the outcome will be as I desire. That is devotional service. We do as we are instructed, and the outcome is in the hands of the Lord. It's not in our control. And then the whole process of karma, the whole process of action and reaction becomes placed where it should be, coming from the Lord, instead of coming from the material energy or from our perception, material energy. So everything can be purified by the process of devotional service and by surrendering to Krishna. Surrendering to Krishna is to offer him what he wants, what is needed, and that has already been explained. What is needed? Harinam Sankirtan is very much needed. It's needed, and that is why he's pleased by that. But Harinam Sankirtan alone, without proper dealings of one devotee with another, is not enough for him. He wants that too, because that is also needed. So he wants that, and he's pleased by that. And Krishna, he wants to be personally involved in our lives, and the more we actually do surrender our lives to him and offer him what he desires and do what is needed, then actually he does become more personally involved. But we have to allow him to. Just like how a loving father, he's always ready to offer advice to his son. He's always ready to offer whatever the son needs, to lend a hand. But if the son refuses that help and he wants to act independently, then what can the father do? He has to let him do as he desires. So we are like that. He's giving us that minute independence, that freedom to make a decision. And he won't interfere with that. He won't interfere with that minute independence we have. He will never interfere with that. We have that minute independence with which to make decisions. So we have to actually open up to him. We actually have to be ready to accept that personal intervention by him in our lives. He's wanting to personally be involved in what's going on in our lives, but we have to allow him to do that. So Swayambhuva Manu, he's explaining this multifaceted, complex, inconceivable science to his grandson in the hopes that he will reawaken to his identity being a devotee of the Lord, and that he will again surrender to the Lord and open up to pleasing the Lord. Srila Prabhupada ki! Are there any questions or comments or corrections from anyone? Raghunath Prabhu? Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for your class. Like the devotee, you were talking about karma. I don't know if you'd like to elaborate. When a devotee surrenders, then he is free from all sinful reactions. So when he gets some punishment, is that in the category of karma?
There's a verse, it's Srimad Bhagavatam chapter 10, text 14. Tatenu kampam shushamikṣamano. And in the purport to that verse, Srila Prabhupada explains that sometimes a devotee will receive reactions which look like karma, because devotees who are surrendered to the Lord, they still get sick, and they still have problems even with the mind, and they have issues with material bodies still, and it looks like they're receiving a karmic reaction. But it's to be understood that the Lord, He is minimizing the karmic reaction that the devotee would have got, but it's also just a part of material nature, that the material body is not meant for enjoyment. It's not meant for comfort. It's actually it's a miserable condition to be in a material body, but the pure devotee doesn't actually experience misery being in this material body, because he's transcendental to that. Like Srila Prabhupada, he suffered many heart attacks, and he suffered in his old age with many different ailments, but it didn't deter him from his mission. And even the Pandavas, who are great devotees of the Lord, they had to suffer terribly, but everything is always going on under the desire of the Lord. Sometimes it's to teach others. Like we could learn from watching Srila Prabhupada. He taught us how to die, how to leave our bodies, what it means to do that, and what it means to transcend that. He taught us how to live, what it means to transcend just being in a material body. So sometimes it is the Lord wanting to teach others, and sometimes it is also the Lord just giving a token of what the devotee needed to come back to him, because karma is always meant for that, and the reaction should have been much worse. Like if somebody does get sick, if a devotee gets sick, or if they go through some difficulty, if their mood is that, my Lord, I know that this is just a fraction of what I actually deserved, and they maintain their worship of the Lord, He's so pleased that He actually allows them entrance into His abode at the end of their lives. Just like how if a son remains alive, all he has to do is remain alive to get the inheritance of his father. So all we have to do is remain alive in our endeavor to please the Lord, regardless of whatever happens. Then we actually do receive the Lord's mercy more and more, so much so that we get to go back to the spiritual world. But it is difficult to understand karma. We can't understand karma because we don't know what we've done for many thousands of lives. We have no idea what we did and the kinds of reactions that we're getting and how Krishna is intervening in our lives. Krishna is behind the process of karma in the first place, but he will become more personally involved for a devotee who is personally offering all of their activities to the Lord. But it's so intricate that, how can I explain? Do you have any more thoughts on that? Okay. Padma, do you have anything? No. Okay. Krishna Chaitanya, you have anything? Oh, you want the translation to the text? Okay. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, by His inconceivable supreme energy, time, causes the interaction of the three modes of material nature, and thus varieties of energy become manifest. It appears that He is acting, but He is not the actor. He is killing, but He is not the killer. Thus it is understood that only by His inconceivable power is everything happening. Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki, Gaur Premanande.